1 because we got zeros all out here, so we'll put a 1 in that one. Then we're going to fill it all up with 1s except for the 0 here, still with a 1 and a 0 right there. And so that's going to be 172.16.5.254 again, and 172.16.5.255, which is when we're filling up the whole remainder of 1s. Everybody following those? And where we've done it. You're back to your binary from where we did the subnetting. In this case, the remaining part, all zeros. This one, with a 1 in the last position, zeros in the host positions, but in both of these, looking at what our numbering is from off this, that we've put a 1 over here. A 1 into here with a 0 here. Now, for the remaining 3, we can actually go back to, we've got several more leftover subnets up here, because we really don't have another subnet within the subnet. And we can use one of these remaining subnets we never used to split up to make these 3. So we can use this next one and put a 1 in it, and a 0, and a 0, and go back to that original way we borrowed on, not the sub-borrowing yet. And go with 172 again, and I'm not putting it on the first host line because this isn't the one, this is the one we're going to split. And we've got a 1 in the 1, 2, 4, 8 in the 8s. So we'll use 8.0 as the subnet we're going to work with. Now, that one we want to split it so we can handle 3 two-host networks. We could take it and borrow for the network portion all the way down to here, so that we got plenty of subnets that got 2 hosts on. Or you could choose anywhere in between. I'm going to go ahead and choose right down to this one. And so we'll use 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, but remember we got all zeros filling on out back to here. So for this first one then, because we're borrowing that many bits, we're again looking at, we're putting a 1 in the 4s here. So it's going to be the 172.16.8.4 as the subnet address. Host, first usable host, 172.16.8.5. Second usable host, which also happens to be our last usable host, is 172.16.8. Think about it, you've only got 2 spots here. This one had a 0 and a 1 in it. So we're looking at this one right here on that line. So it had a 0 and a 1 in it. Then for the last usable host, it's a 1 and a 0. So a 1 in the 2s, along with the 1 in the 4s, so it's 6. Broadcast, 1 in both positions, 172.16.8.7. Network 4, the usable hosts are 5 and 6, which would be the 2 ends of your serial cable, and 7 for your broadcast address. Now, without even going back to the binary, y'all can build from what you remember from what you did in subnetting before to the next one, because these 3 are just one subnet right after the other. All we're going to do is just keep increasing this number here upward to handle on it. Actually, not this number here, upward to handle on it. So now we're going to go for 1 in the 8s. So we're going to have 172.16.8.8. Which notice is the next number from this one. for the subnet. So what we're doing there is we're putting a 1 in the 8s column and a 0 in that one, which is this one right here. And then the other one's going to have a 1 in the 8s and a 1 in the 4s column. So it's going to be 172.16.8.12. We're not doing anything with the first 3 octets. When we get down to subnetting it down to this level, they stayed constant, 172.16.8. First one, 1 in the 4s. This one has got a 1 in the 8s and a 0 in the 4s. This one's got a 1 in the 4s and a 1 in the 8s. If we needed another one, that you had another router tossed around there too, guess what? Put a 1 in the 4s, I don't know 1 in the 4s, but a 1 in the 16s and a 0 in the 8 and 4s. And so it would be on 16 for the subnet. Usable address, 172.16.8.9. Last usable address, 16.8.10. Notice our range of addresses on these 2 host subnets. The first usable address and the last usable address is all of your usable addresses. As opposed to up here, you had a whole bunch of them. You actually had 510 usable addresses in between those 2 numbers. Now, it's just the 2. Think about it. On these subnets, we're not wasting any addresses for what we need. Here, we've got 510 addresses built in. We only need 400. So there's 110 we're not using, but it is growth possibilities, which happens. Rest assured, people need more addresses tomorrow than they need today. And then to broadcast with the 1s in the host portion, so 172.16.8.11. So we got a 1 and a 1 here, along with a 1 in the 8s. So 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. This one, following the same pattern, and remember when y'all did the subnetting before, I showed you once you start to do where they're consistent subnets like you did in the other course, you can actually see your pattern going down and create your numbers off of the previous. They're increasing by 4 each time. By 4, so what's the number this one's going to be, Chris? 13. 13. You got to speak quiet enough so I can hear. Wait. Give me the whole number. What's the first 3 numbers without even having to do any calculating?
172.16.8.
And the last number is going to be what?
16.
Add 4 each time, remember. Because it went 6 to 10. That was by 4, so this one's going to be 14. What then?
14.
14. All right, what's the other one?
15. 172, 116.
172.16.8.15. Okay? So with vlsm, we can take and create variable length subnets. We created a subnet here that had 510 addresses. We've got subnets here that we created that have got 126 usable hosts. And we created 3 subnets here that have got 2 usable hosts each. As opposed to, before you did vlsm, how many hosts would we have had to put on each subnet? With the way you did it before today's lecture. Every one of these would have had to have 510, because this one's got 510 usable, 126, 126, 2, 2, and 2. But if you didn't do variable length subnetting, so that's for VLSM, we'll call this plain sub, you would have had to make them each 510. Just looking at the last three, you know you just saved a whole bunch of space. That you didn't waste over 1,500 addresses, not counting the wastage up here, but the real simple calculation. So VLSM is going to let you make more efficient use of the amount of space you've got. Does everybody follow on that? You understand how the basics of doing VLSM now? They don't really go much detail in the book. I gave you a lot more than they give you right there. They just give you a quick overview and assume you know something about it. And that's the approach that VLSM is going to work on. Good luck with the assignment.